Did you know you can actually stop monsters from running away from you with a special new item? Or that you can run up certain walls and then jump off to do a unique attack? Or that you can get one of the rarest resources in the game by actually leaving monsters uncarved to let them decay over time? I'll show you how all of that works in a minute, but there are a ton of little tricks like this that the game either doesn't show you or just doesn't explain very well. Like, you've probably at least gotten the sense that the new wound and focus system is important, and the game does teach you to hit the same part of the monster repeatedly to create wounds, and that you can either pop them with a focus strike attack by hitting R1 for a burst of damage, or leave the wounds intact and hit them with regular attacks for boosted damage. But what it doesn't really show you is that doing those R1 focus strikes can actually make you loot resources from the monster. To do a focus strike, you just need to make sure the focus mode reticle is glowing, which shows that you're lined up with a wound, and then hit R1. But if you're just doing regular attacks to hit wounds, it can be a bit hard to target them, even with focus mode on, because regular attack animations don't have any lock-on to the wound like focus strikes do. But you can actually redirect an attack mid-swing by simply moving the camera to get the focus reticle back on the wound. That's particularly helpful with slower weapons like the greatsword. So you can see why having focus mode active to have that focus reticle most of the time in combat is really helpful. That's why I recommend putting focus mode on toggle instead of hold, which you can do by going into the controls settings and then scrolling over to the second page and switching aim/focus mode controls to press to toggle. This way you just toggle it on at the start of a fight and leave it unless you need it off for some reason. It's also why over in the camera settings, I prefer to set these camera speed while L2 is triggered to be the same as my regular camera settings. That just makes the camera move the same speed when you're in focus mode, but the wound and focus system goes even deeper. Like, if you mount a monster, you can actually create multiple wounds pretty easily as long as you know how to avoid getting thrown off. The trick is, when a monster tries to throw you off, which is signaled by the monster moving more violently and your screen getting a bit warped and blurry, you just have to move to another spot on the body by flicking the left stick left or right. Just hop to a different spot and you'll stay on. No need to hold R2 to cling on or anything like that. And also, don't worry if you didn't finish creating a wound in your last spot. You can go back to finish creating it next time you need to move. Big monsters have anywhere from 2 to 4 spots where you can create wounds while mounted, and as long as you move each time the monster tries to throw you off, it's actually pretty easy to keep your stamina up and get a wound in every spot. And then for the dismount, try to get an R1 focus strike in on one of them. You'll also want to keep in mind that popping wounds with a focus strike will either partially or fully charge up weapons that have a gauge, like the longsword, charge blade, or insect glaive. For example, on the longsword, you'll instantly jump up a charge color level. So like white to yellow or yellow to red. That's pretty solid, but on the insect glaive, it's even more broken. Every single time you do a focus strike with an insect glaive, your kinsect will grab all 3 colored buffs for you. No need to manually target different parts of the monster like normal. You'll get all 3 buffs instantly. And then you can actually consume those buffs to do a special rising spiral slash attack. First, you have to hold circle for a couple of seconds and then release to do a strong descending slash, and then you follow that up with another tap of circle to consume the 3 buffs and do the rising spiral slash. So my broader point is, if one of your favorite weapons has a gauge mechanic, keep in mind that popping wounds with focus strikes will give you some sort of shortcut to a powerful attack. You should also experiment in the training area to see how much damage your favorite weapon's focus strike attack deals without even targeting a wound. For some weapons, like the charge blade and insect glaive, this can actually be pretty strong, and you might want to use it like another standard attack. It's also worth mentioning that pretty much every monster has at least one attack it will do where afterwards it'll expose a weak point for a moment. Weak points work exactly like wounds, including glowing red under focus mode. You just don't need to create them. I've got a bunch more combat tips for you, but let's knock out some really important hunting prep and quality of life ones first. Beyond the basic tips like checking in with Tom at the ingredient center to grab your rations regularly and remembering to cook and eat a meal in your tent before each hunt, you'll want to check in with the provisions stockpile periodically because he'll have new items for sale each time you unlock a new map region. Like, for example, he eventually has hot and cold potions for sale, which definitely become important for certain areas. Those are a couple of the items I include in my standard item loadout, by the way, and you should definitely make yourself one of these loadouts. Just like you can create custom loadouts for your gear under the Change Equipment menu, you can also make loadouts for items, which is super handy because not only will it instantly refresh your pouch with only the items you want, but it also automatically dumps anything extra into the storage box. So every time you come back to camp, you can just pop into your tent, open the item pouch, hit L3 to go to your custom loadout list, and select your preset loadout to always have exactly what you want. Definitely a big time saver for inventory management. And feel free to copy my basic supplies loadout that I'm showing here as a template to get started with. The other big quality of life thing you should definitely do is set up custom radial menus, which you open by holding L1. Compared to scrolling through the item bar, these are way faster for getting at things you need quickly, like healing in the middle of combat. The easiest place to set up your radial menus is by opening the main menu and then hitting Customize Radial Menu and then R3 to open the controller settings view. You can make yourself up to 8 different radial menus, but for now I would just focus on 2. One for all the items you want fast access to in combat, and a second one for some other important ones you want access to for exploration and general gameplay. I'll show you my 2 main ones here so you can see which items and actions I put on them. I'm not saying these are optimal for everyone, they're just what I like having access to for combat and exploration. That being said, I do highly recommend you include the new optimal health recovery and optimal status recovery actions on your combat wheel. These will automatically find the best potion to use so you don't over or under heal and don't have to go looking through various status cleansing items. Of course, you should also have the whetstone on your weapon wheel for sharpening, which is actually better because it won't put your weapon away at the end of the animation like when using the whetstone from the item bar. You can also use the pause game action to fully pause the game, unlike when you just open the settings panel. That does only work in online single player though. I also highly recommend you go into the controls options list and change the item use controls setting to type 2. That'll make it so you have to click in on the right stick to use an item instead of it just automatically getting used as soon as you scroll to it in the radial menu. And if you do need to get at something in the item bar, I like to change the expanded item bar controls to type 3. That way, when you're already holding L1 to use the radial menu, you can just hold R1 to expand the item bar and quickly look through it. You should also know that it's super easy to manage pop-up camps at the support desk instead of going out to the actual sites. Not only can you see a list of all the sites you found and initiate their setup directly from here, but you also get a safety level rating for each site. Although I found out later that it doesn't actually matter very much to put campsites in dangerous locations because even if they do get trampled, they get automatically repaired after a bit. Still, it's more convenient to put them in safe locations. So after you've explored a map for a while, check the support desk to see if you have a good distribution of camps and add more to sites you've discovered for additional fast travel options. Also, pro tip, it's smart to customize each pop-up camp to add a dummy barrel. If your weapon has a gauge, you can use the barrel to safely charge it up before heading out on a hunt. Oh, and while you're at the support desk, if you haven't already, make sure to check the claim content and DLC sections for some free items like a character edit voucher. While you're out exploring, you should also keep an eye out for underwater areas. Not only are these cool to explore, but they often contain unique, valuable resources. And keep in mind, you can actually use the capture net to easily grab fish for your meals, and some of them sell for quite a bit of zenny. Pretty early on, you'll also gain access to armor spheres, which are used to upgrade your armor. Don't worry about saving these up. You'll get lots more later, so it's definitely worth using some to upgrade some armor pieces while playing through the main story. And don't forget about equipping a charm too. They're basically another piece of gear and they can give you another point towards a skill. So generally, you want to check what skills you have on your armor that you're actually using and then use a charm that will help boost that further. Back out on the hunt, remember you can open with an easy chunk of solid damage by simply crouching and sneaking up to a monster to do a sneak attack. As long as you're on their back half and they haven't been alerted yet, you'll get the prompt for it. And if you can manage to put an explosive barrel down right behind them, the sneak attack can actually trigger it for extra damage. The other way I generally kick off a fight is by riding in on my Seikret and hitting triangle and circle to do a dismount attack. In World, you could jump off ledges and do an attack mid-air to deal mounting damage, and that's still true here in Wilds. But now, jumping off the Seikret lets you deal mounting damage too. You still need to build up to the monster's hidden threshold before you'll actually mount it though. So generally, you'll get your first mount after 2 or 3 aerial attacks, which can be off the Seikret or another other way. Just remember that after each time you mount, it will take more mounting damage to trigger the next one. The Seikret is really important in combat for a few other key reasons too. Calling your Seikret anytime you're knocked down is definitely a good idea. It'll almost always scoop you up and get you mobile again much faster than waiting for your character to get up. You also want to get in the habit of calling the Seikret anytime you need to heal or sharpen. Being able to stay mobile on the Seikret is just so much safer than running around on foot. Plus, don't forget the Seikret has its own supply pouch. This basically replaces the chest you'd get at the start of hunts in World. Extra supplies get put in the Seikret's pouch at the start of hunts, and it gets restocked at intervals as a hunt progresses. Alma should let you know when that happens. You open the Seikret's pouch by hitting left on the D-pad. Of course, the Seikret also carries your secondary weapon, which you can immediately switch to by calling it with right on the D-pad. And actually, that reminds me, I wanted to show you how to make the Seikret controls work better so it's not always moving around on its own when you don't want it to. The first thing to change is the Seikret Auto Explore setting, which is under Game Settings on page 3. You want that off. And you probably also want to go to page 2 under Controls Settings and change the Seikret Manual Controls to Type 2. That'll let you move the Seikret around with the left stick, just like how you move your character. So now, when you want to call the Seikret to manually control it, you hit down on the D-pad. If you want it to automatically take you to your map pin, which includes a monster you're currently fighting, then you call it with up on the D-pad. If you want to switch weapons, you hit right, and if you want to see the Seikret's pouch, you hit left. In the middle of combat, remember to always look up for various rocks, debris, and structures that you can pull down on the monster for big damage. A lot of the areas monsters run to during a hunt will have these, and you don't even have to be super precise with them. There's vine traps in trees as well, and keep in mind you don't actually need those to fall on a monster. You can pull one down ahead of time and then bait a monster into it on the ground. Of course, flash bugs are always good to keep an eye out for as well, to briefly immobilize a monster, but if there aren't any around, flash pods for your slinger will do the same thing, and they'll actually ground flying monsters too. For burrowing monsters, you want to use screamer pods to force them out of the ground. Watch for monster parts that drop off during combat too. These can be picked up to create unique slinger pods that are usually pretty strong. And you're probably also going to want to carry luring pods, which you can use to stop monsters from running away from you. Super handy. A little ways into the story, you'll also start to encounter monsters that can create these sort of mineral formations with some of their attacks. You can explode these with any random slinger pod, which will deal a decent amount of damage if a monster is near it. But what you really want to do is hit them with a matching elemental slinger pod. Doing that will trigger a chain reaction that can cause multiple formations to explode and deal a lot more damage. More combat tricks in a second, but first you're going to want to consider adjusting these settings. I think pretty much everyone should turn off auto sheath on page 1 of the control settings. Under game settings, I think you should also change weapon attack power display to display without coefficient. The coefficient being on is basically the game's way of making comparisons between weapon types a little simpler, but it actually obscures the true base damage values, which I think in the long run is actually more confusing for players. So at least consider turning this off later once you have a better grip on the game. For cosmetic purposes, you might also want to change the head armor visibility to hide, and I also personally like going into the HUD settings on page 1 and turning off the name display for my character and Palico. You might also want to turn feline language on if you find your cat's dialogue distracting or annoying. Don't worry, you'll still get subtitles to translate what the cat says. Okay, so for running up these walls, it doesn't work everywhere, but each map has some special walls you can just run up by running at them with your weapon out. Some are a little more obvious than others, like the big dead tree trunks in the jungle biome, but in general, you're looking for abnormally flat vertical features. When you have one, just run at the wall with your weapon out, and then hit triangle before you start to scramble to trigger a special aerial attack. Remember, you can also craft traps like shock traps to immobilize monsters. You'll need trap tools from the provision stockpile at camp, along with whatever resources are necessary to craft the trap, and you can pick up unused shock traps to avoid wasting them. Traps are particularly good if you're trying to capture a monster instead of killing it, which you should definitely consider as a big time saver if you're out hunting just to get resources for gear. Capturing will let you complete the quest faster, and also gives a better chance to loot rare resources. You'll know a monster is ready to be captured when you see a little skull icon flashing next to their symbol on the minimap. First, immobilize them with a shock or pitfall trap, and then pop 2 or 3 trank bombs to capture. If you do go for the kill though, maybe experiment with actually not carving the monster right away. See, leaving it there for a while will let the carcass go through multiple stages of decay, which does some interesting things. In particular, the drop rates for resources change, and some resources become more common, like monster fluid. I haven't found this especially useful on large monsters, but on small ones, after about 5 or 6 minutes, they become rotten corpses, which have a small chance to get covered in mycelium and have a bushy growth, which will let you harvest a Wyvernsprout, one of the rarest materials in the game that you can trade for some other valuable items. It's a fairly low chance one will spawn, so you'll want to kill a bunch of small monsters when trying to farm these, and you have to hang out near them for 5 or 6 minutes while you wait for the decay, or else they'll despawn. Even if you don't get a Wyvern Sprout, the other resources you can get from the carcasses and eventually bone piles are fairly valuable too. But if you're mid-fight with a big monster and things are going south, you can always bail quickly by hitting the map button and then left on the D-pad and then confirm twice in a row to get swept off back to camp on the Seikret. You can do that button sequence pretty quick to avoid getting carded if you need to. I'll have lots more tips in my next video, which will be right here when it's ready. Until then, you're welcome to come hang out in my Discord server to talk hunting tips or just hang out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video in just a second.